Hey, welcome back. J.P.'s World of Wrestling. I'm your man, J.P. It's WrestleMania season. As my shirt says, this video is all about WrestleMania and my memories of WrestleMania. Now, I just watched the first couple of WrestleManias on Peacock, and just to kind of bring back some memories, And the unique thing about those first two WrestleManias is that, like I've said on this channel before, I didn't really get to watch pay-per-views live when I was a kid. I always had to wait till they came out on video, but the first two WrestleManias I didn't even get to watch until probably the mid-90s. I was living in Reno, Nevada at the time, and just about a block or so away from our apartments was this little video store. And so one day I went into the video store. They didn't really have anything as far as movies go that I wanted to see. But they had the first two WrestleManias on VHS tape. Remember those big, thick plastic clamshell things that the wrestling videos used to come in? Well, they had both the first two WrestleManias. So I rented both of them. And I watched them, like, the first day I watched WrestleMania 1, and then I watched WrestleMania 2. Now, my first impressions of WrestleMania 1 were not super positive, just because it looked old and it felt old. I guess it was just maybe the lighting and just the way they did it. It just looked like a house show that you'd go see at like a local sports venue or something. And that's just, but after a while, plus I didn't really know all the wrestlers. Like before WrestleMania 1, I had no idea who Special Delivery Jones was. But because he had a match at WrestleMania 1 with King Kong Bundy, I kind of got to know who he was a little bit. But then the second one, well, I'll back up. After a while, I kind of warmed up to the first one. Like as I got more and more familiar with the old content, then I kind of warmed up to the first one. And the main event was pretty good. It was Hulk Hogan and Mr. T in a tag team match against Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff and Roddy Piper. And I liked that match. That was a fun match. And Cyndi Lauper was there at WrestleMania 1. But anyway, then I watched WrestleMania 2. Now, WrestleMania 2, I really liked from the beginning, because WrestleMania 2 was kind of when I was sort of introduced to wrestling. So I was kind of more familiar with it, and just the way that it looked, that was kind of my first memories of the WWF. And I really liked it. All the matches were pretty good. They had the steel cage match where that guy took on King Kong Bundy in a steel cage, WWF title, and it was like 3 different locations, and they brought in like different celebrities, and it was a fun pay-per-view. But then after that, of course, there was the big one, WrestleMania 3, Hulk versus Andre. And my memories of that one, I remember that was the first WrestleMania that I ever kind of knew about. Because I remember going over to my grandma's house, my cousins were over there, and they were talking about WrestleMania 3 coming up. I'm like, what? Like, WrestleMania 3 is coming up. I'm like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? They said, oh yeah, Hulk Hogan's going to wrestle Andre the Giant. And I'm like, Hulk Hogan's going to wrestle Andre the Giant? Well, when is it? When can I see it? I got to see it. And they said, no, it's only on pay-per-view or closed circuit. And I'm like, oh, okay. I had no idea what that even meant. But I remember later on renting the video and really, really loving WrestleMania 3. I really, really liked WrestleMania 3 from beginning to end. I thought it was awesome. It was like this big epic main event. And then all of the undercard matches were pretty good too. And I really liked it. And then the funny thing is WrestleMania 4, I didn't even know about until much later, when I bought the DVD. That tells you how long it had been until I got to see it. DVDs had come out. So I bought the DVD and I brought it home and watched it. And I'm like, man, I don't even remember this. I don't even remember like this big tournament they had for the title, because the title was vacant. Because I remember seeing the Saturday night main event with Hulk Hogan and Andre, where there was kind of a screw job, where there was like twin referees and Andre selling the belt to DiBiase. I remember all that, but I don't remember WrestleMania 4. That is until I went and watched the DVD. Then I'm like, oh, okay. But at that point, I'm like, wow, I really like this one. I really like WrestleMania 4. But WrestleMania 5 is, I think, the first WrestleMania that I remember being like a big deal. You know, the Mega Powers explode. Hulk Hogan and Macho Man. These two, like, top guys, you know, who were best friends, and now they're feuding, and now they hate each other. And that was the first time hearing about, or knowing about WrestleMania, and knowing how big and epic it was. And, you know, that one was a really good one. I really, really liked that one. And then the next year, WrestleMania 6 from Canada. And that one, I know a lot of people who were on both sides of the fence, whether you were for Hogan or whether you were for the Warrior. Now, at the time, I really liked the Ultimate Warrior. I loved the Ultimate Warrior. I thought he was cool. I thought he was great. He had these really bright colors. He wore the face paint. He ran to the ring and beating his chest like, you know, he's this wild character, and I liked it. And as much as I still loved Hulk Hogan, at the same time, I was kind of tired of Hulk Hogan. I was kind of tired of him being the champion, and I was kind of tired of him just winning every single time. But I still loved him. I still loved the guy, and to this day, I think that guy is the greatest thing ever. But I wanted something else. So along comes the Warrior. Warrior beats Hogan. And again, WrestleMania 6 is the one that I watched it on video as soon as it came out. But that was the one where I've talked about on this channel where me and my sister we almost got to watch that one live on pay-per-view. But like I said, when my dad heard the price of it, he's like, no, we're not paying that much for a wrestling event. But, you know, it is what it is, and I got to see it later. And I remember the next night on Primetime Wrestling, me and my sister kind of were watching it contently, hoping that they would tell us, you know, who's the champion, who won, who's the champion. But I remember Gorilla Monsoon saying, okay, well, we have a new WWF champion, but as far as everything else, you know, the thing just happened yesterday, so give us some time. We will show you some clips. We will show you some photos from the event. And so just give us some time. So, and then, of course, the year after that, it was WrestleMania 7. And I remember seeing that one, although I didn't really see that one until later as well. I waited until later when that was on DVD as well, although I did see clips of different matches of that one. Now, WrestleMania 8, I remember my first time seeing WrestleMania 8, I went over to Joe's house, and we watched it on video. And I remember watching that one, because I really liked that one as well. Although I still believe that the main event of WrestleMania 8 should have been Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan. But WWF had run Hogan Flair house shows, and I guess they just didn't sell well. I mean, people just didn't buy the tickets. I think it's because WWF fans didn't really know who Ric Flair was. And so, to them, it wasn't really that big of a match. It wasn't really that epic of a match. But for me, I watched both WWF and WCW. So to me, this is like, oh, this is the biggest match ever. But it is what it is. And there's, you know. So, that was WrestleMania. And WrestleMania 8, of course, you know, had Bret Hart taking on Roddy Piper, Intercontinental Championship. And I like that match because that match really proved that Roddy Piper could, in fact, wrestle. And he actually had a really good match with Bret. And then WrestleMania 9, the year after that, some people kind of say it was a really terrible one and it was the worst one ever. And it wasn't real strong, like especially for the time at that point. I think it had been probably the worst one ever. I don't know. It didn't have a big feel, even though it had kind of a theme, like a Caesar Cleopatra theme, but I don't know, it just didn't have a feel. Plus, there was the whole thing with Hogan and Brett and Yokozuna at the end, and that kind of left a bad taste in some people's mouth, and I don't know. And then all the WrestleManias from the mid-90s, they were okay. You know, I liked them, but they were okay. But without Hulk Hogan, it just didn't feel as big or as epic anymore, although I still liked it. But then they started getting into the Attitude Era, and at that point, I still watched the WWF, but it wasn't as interesting to me. It wasn't as epic, and I didn't really care about it as much. But I mean, it is what it is. And then in the later years, when I got together with my first wife, you know, she was into wrestling, so we started watching WrestleManias from there on out. Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, those were the two pay-per-views that we would pay for every year. We'd watch them, and like I said, they weren't as good as those earlier WrestleManias, but like I said, I still watched them, and I still got some kind of enjoyment out of them. But then it gets me to now, the modern day. Last year I watched WrestleMania. The year before I watched WrestleMania, and the year in 2020 that was kind of the whole pandemic, so they had to do WrestleMania from the training center with no crowd, and it just didn't feel right. The next year they went back to Raymond James Stadium in Tampa, Florida, and that was like the first time they had a big crowd in a couple years, and it felt better, but still I wasn't as engaged in the storylines. And this year's WrestleMania, I'm just not really that engaged in the storylines. In fact, this year I may not even tune into WrestleMania, and that's really sad, because as a wrestling fan, WrestleMania has always been like it's like our Super Bowl. But I don't know, I'm just not invested in the storylines anymore. There are a handful of guys that are modern wrestlers that I really do like, and I really do like to watch, but modern wrestling just doesn't hold my interest. And it's just sad, because there are a lot of really talented guys that are out there that are interesting, that are trying to make a living at doing it. And independent wrestling is great. I love it. I love going to independent shows. But as far as watching the main product on TV, it doesn't hold any interest for me. But anyway, what are your WrestleMania memories? What do you remember about this event? Leave them in the comments below. And if you're new here, go ahead and like and subscribe. Boom. I'll see you next time.